And welcome to our afternoon session on transformational strategic planning. My name is Jason Leapart, and I'm part of the support department at ARCOS. Please do not forget to use the mobile app if you have questions, or you can simply ask the question during the live session. We do encourage that, but if anything comes to mind afterwards, please let us know. I believe you can ask questions for up to 30 minutes afterward. After the session, please make sure that you are taking the survey on the app. It does help us with future conferences to know what we can do to improve. I am very pleased to introduce Patrick McCullough from Jackson EMC to present this session today. So please welcome Patrick.
Hey, good afternoon. Thanks, everybody. So at Jackson EMC, we've been kind of changing things a little bit over the past few years, probably since before I started, and looking at things a little bit more holistically. So strategic planning has turned into a big part of our culture. So I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about how we do strategic planning at Jackson EMC, and kind of talk about how that strategic planning brought us to ARCOS. So Jackson EMC is kind of small on the scale of a lot of the folks that have been at this conference. We could probably fit into a little corner of most of the IOUs, but we're about a 250,000 customer co-op in the northeast part of Georgia. And we've been doing the strategic planning process for, I guess, 6 years. And it's been a complete cultural change. And that culture revolves around 3 building blocks, and it's all about our vision, our mission, our values. Everything we do lines up with those 3 things, and those are the tenets that kind of create everything that we do at Jackson. So our vision, we want to be the best, we want to think ahead, we want to look at what's next all the time, and at the same time, because we're a co-op, we're close to our people, we're close to our members, so we want to be friendly, and so it's a balance that we get to play. Our mission it's all about our members. That's the kind of the cooperative spirit. So we live in the communities we serve, and that's a big part of everything we do, and that aligns with our values. So our number one value is our members. Number 2, we value the people that work at Jackson EMC. And then the communities, again, we live where we serve. So we've got a 10-county area in northeast Georgia. And our performance, honest and open communication, and the spirit of cooperation. Those are the 6 things that guide. Those are kind of our road markers to kind of keep us in line with everything we do. So how do we do it? So the first thing is we've got to identify what are the things that mean the most to us, and where are we lacking? So the identification of our strategic initiatives starts with our values. And the first thing that we look at is member feedback. So what are our members saying? What do they care about? The next thing that we look at is feedback from our board of directors. Our C-suite reports directly to them, so what are they concerned with? And then the other 4 areas have to do with internal employee feedback. So the first way we look at that is through an engagement survey, and that may be something that gets done pretty frequently, but the difference is how we use the information. So this becomes more of a report card that Jackson EMC gets to use to evaluate how the leadership is doing, and it gives all the employees across the company the ability to grade our leadership on how we're doing. And it's just like being in grade school. It's reading, writing, and arithmetic. But in the co-op world or in the power industry, there's set dynamic areas that we're concerned with, and we want to raise that grade from year to year. And so our leadership, our CEO, our board of directors, they look at those responses, and they're constantly looking at ways that we can improve those scores and do better as a cooperative. The next thing is we have employee input sessions. So The first thing about these input sessions is that they're usually off-site. They're handled by a contractor so that all of our employees feel like they're free to express anything that they want to. And we go through what we call the SWOT analysis. So what are the strengths and weaknesses? What kind of opportunities and threats are we dealing with? And then the coolest thing is everyone gets the chance to say, okay, if I can wave a magic wand, what's the biggest thing I'd want to change within the company? Then what's really interesting and neat about being the size that we are, we've got about 450 full-time employees. So our CEO takes the time to go through and speak to all of our employees every year. And he's got small group meetings with somewhere around 10 employees, and those are scheduled throughout the year. All of our supervision and up, and gets to meet with them on a yearly basis, and from below supervision is every other year. And what that means is everyone gets to hear from him directly what the future is of our co-op and what he's trying to do to bring us to the next level from an overall corporate standpoint. And at the same time, everyone can go around the table and express to him what we're doing well, what we're not doing well, and he hears that feedback directly. So it's kind of a cool perk of working at a smaller corporation. And then the last thing is every year we go through departmental strategic planning. And so we go through the questions of where are we now, where do we want to be, how are we going to get there, and management and supervision from each department gets together for a day-long session every year, and we try to map out the answers to these questions. So we do that again by going through this SWOT analysis. So internal to our departments, what are we doing really well? What aren't we doing well? And external, what are the things that we can leverage, and what are the things that look like they're gonna hurt us or could possibly affect us? We define KPIs. So earlier, I was talking about the employee engagement survey, which kind of gives the report card for our company as a whole. So we're trying to define our own internal departmental report cards and be able to report to our leadership on how we're doing our jobs effectively and what matters to us, and how do we move the needle. And the biggest question we've got to answer is, what do we really want to get done? Because that's a lot of information. All 6 of those methods of gaining feedback and bringing that all to leadership begs the question, what do we really want to do? Because we can't do it all. So add a little bit of comedy to kind of give you an idea of how that really affects us. So over the past 6 years, we've had 200 strategic initiatives, and there's 40 going on right now company-wide. And for a company of 450 full-time employees, that's still a pretty good amount. And so we've got to remember that all the time. It feels like we're doing a lot, but there's always more that we want to do. So our leadership team takes all that information. They determine what it is we want to do, figure out what is the anything that we want versus the everything that we have in our heads, and break it down between what are the initiatives that affect the whole company, what are the things that are just kind of a small project that a department can handle. And so that's used to break things down into initiative teams. Teams get together, and a bunch of subject matter experts come across from different departments, usually for corporate or within departments for these departmental. And the employees lead the change, and because there's so much engagement from the employees, there's a lot of ownership. So at the end of the day, when that change is made, people buy into it because they were part of making that change happen. So on a corporate strategic initiative team, someone's selected as the PM, and then it's chartered. Basically, it's just a document that says, why are we here? What's the background? What are we trying to accomplish? When do we want to get it done by? So it's just our roadmap. And then, we just get together the team and get started. Cross-departmental team is much simpler. Obviously, it's just scaling down. So you can just pick a group from within a department or from a couple of departments that intersect. At the end, once the project is complete, the biggest thing that comes to mind, it goes back to our 6 values, is open and honest communication. So communication is really key. And there's a lot of things that feel like they don't really need to be communicated to be effective. But one of the things I've learned is that just because I don't think that someone else needs the information doesn't necessarily mean that it's not valuable to them. And there's a lot of people in just like call out, we take that for granted in operations, but there's so many different parts of the company that don't ever touch call out. They don't know what it means, why we have it, or why it's such a big deal to make sure that we have a system that works that way. So again, it goes back to our vision, mission, values. These are the things that keep us in line. So all these decisions, whenever we're going through the process, we make all these decisions based on these 3 tenets. And it's funny, while we're going through the process, we're having these meetings, this stuff comes up in our conversation, and people are asking, well, does that really meet our vision? Are we really keeping in line with our values? Are we making sure that we're valuing our members or our people? And how can we do that better? So the next thing, let me talk about our path to ARCOS call out. So in 2020, going back to the departmental strategic planning session, we're split into 4 districts. So our 4 district E&O directors came together and decided that we needed to have a way to grade ourselves on how well we were doing with call out. And we realized pretty quickly that our processes and our software didn't give us those options. So we found out that in order to get there, we're going to have to rework our policies and find a new way. So we put together a departmental and initiative team. Since we're talking about the operations side specifically, there's 4 districts, but those four districts all fall underneath the operations area. And we developed a charter. We came together, a group of 10, 5 directors and 5 superintendents/foremen. And we started getting together on a bi-weekly basis to start hashing this out. And one thing that really is true is when you get engagement from more people, they really do feel like they have ownership in it. And we haven't fully implemented, but there's this conversation that's happening around our company all the time. When is it going to start? We've heard all these things. We know that you're making these changes to the procedures. We know that call-out's coming, and they've been involved in the process, so it's almost like they're excited. They're anticipating these changes. It's really cool to be a part of. So one of the things that we also had to do, we don't do things in a bubble just because the big impact was for operations specifically. There were some other SMEs that we had to call on to make sure that we were staying in line, safety and training, HR, IT. The biggest thing that we did was changed our procedures. So our internal process, we found out that it was just overly complicated. We wanted to, again, going back to the original strategic plan was to improve our after-hours call response. So we wanted to simplify that. We wanted to incentivize people to show up. And at the same time, we wanted to create a little bit more equity and create some accountability. And as part of that, we decided that we needed a new call-out software. And the big piece that we're getting from ARCOS is this API, and that's going to give us the ability to kind of leverage all that back-end data and create our own specific reporting based on the requirements that our team came up with. And the icing on the cake is just some of the additional functionality that a lot of you guys are probably already aware of. So communication. So, communicating back to our leadership about what we've done, and then communicating to all of our employees, starting with safety meetings, going around to all of our districts for our standard district meetings, things like that. And you can't go through a project without going back and looking at what you've done well and what you could have done better. So some of the things that we felt like we did well is we not only picked a couple of people from each operating area, but we went around to all of our districts and had small group sessions. And we brought in people to ask them, how are we doing with the existing call out? What can we make better? What do we need to keep the same? And we also reached out to other utilities and asked them what they're doing for call out. So, all those things kind of built upon what we already had an idea about, but it gave us a little bit more to think on and make sure that we're making the right decision. Some of the things that we probably could have done better, I mentioned earlier some of the outside subject matter experts, and I think I spent some time outside of our project team speaking with those SMEs and then bringing that information back to the project team. And a better use of that time would have been bringing those SMEs in and having that group conversation. And the other thing is the planning side of things and going in and not just having an agenda, but making sure that at the end of the day, you know where you're trying to get in each meeting and you make an effort to get there. So we're pretty busy this year. All of these things have come about because of the strategic planning process at Jackson EMC, and we're really focused on our system control center. Obviously, we just revamped and created a new backup system control center last year, and got a little delayed because of material shortages and things like that. But we're looking like it's going to wrap up next month. We're looking at restructuring our system control group, building a new primary system control center, and we've also got, while we're implementing call out, we're also implementing a new SCADA and ADMS software. So we're pretty busy this year. That's all I've got. Anything else are there any questions?
You state my name. Patrick, this is Danny Hayes with ARCOS. I would like to hear a little bit more about how the old process was changed to the new process. What had to change, and you don't have to itemize every single thing, but just give me a general idea of what the groups had to stop doing and how they're doing it now.
One of the things that we focused a lot on was a break. So if someone gets called in overnight, how do we define whether or not they get a break? How long does that break need to be? And this was a really big discussion. We got really deep into this one, but our old system had this complex setup where you had to work so many hours or get called in so many times between a certain period of time, and if you didn't meet that cut, then you could have worked. You could have come in and worked a significant amount of time, and then you're coming in the next day expected to be fresh and get ready to work in 90+ degree weather with high humidity in Georgia, and you haven't really rested very well because you've been up in the middle of the night. Your sleep is broken. So what we decided to do is change that whole methodology and say, we defined kind of the witching hours. And if your sleep is broken during what we considered the most important hours of rest, then you automatically get an 8-hour break. So between midnight and 4 a.m. That's just one of the things that we looked at. There are several others, but in general, we just tried to simplify things and take all the complication out and take out some of the gamesmanship that was going on with our current system.
Hey Patrick, this is Nikki with ARCOS. What did you notice? Can you tell us a little bit more about how the employee engagement part, like from the beginning, before you started all of this, to what it is now, and kind of the culture around that?
So the employee engagement is pretty neat. We get that survey that comes out every year. Each district has a monthly meeting where we get kind of communication from leadership and from each department on things that are going on. And so one of the things we get from that is, kind of how our report card looks. Our leadership reports that down to middle management, and then we communicate things to our employees on how we're doing. And again, going back to the small group meetings with our CEO is really focused on that overall look and looking at the areas that we're really scoring low in and trying to find opportunities to bring that up and kind of bring up morale and find ways to improve. So it starts with him, and it really is an overall company-wide process. I'm not sure how else to. Yep.
Hi, Patrick. This is Christy Sturmer with ARCOS, and I'm sorry that the ARCOS people are monopolizing the questions here. I was curious, you mentioned having a backup control. System control. Mm-hmm. Can you talk more about that? Is that a common, and that's a question for everybody in the room, is that a common thing, or is it a physically separate, like what's the reasoning behind that?
It's a physically separate system control center, and I think for most of the IOUs that's pretty standard. For co-ops, I think some of us are trying to bring that on board. Some of the larger co-ops are starting to, if they haven't already, they're getting into it. There's a couple other larger co-ops in Georgia that already had one, and we feel like we're a little bit late in the game. But if anything were to happen to our main control center, it just gives us another place that we could kind of run those operations.
And Patrick, this is Jason Marcos. We did have a question that came in on the app, and it says, before API was implemented, how was your reporting done? And then also, was it challenging in terms of pulling the data from multiple sources, and how much manual intervention was required in that process?
That's really what the problem was, is we didn't have a way to put together those reports. So when we were going through that process, we have an existing call-out system, and that existing call-out system, we asked for some of the same features that ARCOS is giving us, and they just weren't able to deliver. And so it was very manual. As far as our emergency call, we have two separate groups, and anyone who's in the power delivery side will get it. But we've got a group of people that are scheduled to be on call, every day. So there's one or two people in each district that are always going to be available. They bring their bucket truck home, and they're ready to go. But if a pole goes out and plays in traffic, that two men isn't going to be enough. So we've got an emergency call group, and that emergency call group, they're just home. They're with their family. They're doing whatever they're doing, and the 80-20 rule. When we were going through this process, we realized that 80-20 rule really is taking effect. 20% of our linemen were answering 80% of our call, and that whole equity thing. We feel like everyone needs to be picking up and helping out a little bit. And when we ran the numbers, we found out that if everyone was to answer the call, everyone would only have to take 4 emergency calls every year. And it seemed like a lot when we were first looking at it, but going through, we realized it's really not that much if everyone just gets a little. So I'm not sure if I answered the question well, but we don't currently have a way to manage those reports, and that's what we're really looking forward to getting from ARCOS.
Hi, Patrick. I'm Tammy, your implementation resource. So he is, he's being very modest up here right now, and we've got a couple groups in the room that are going to be in your shoes right now in a few short months, right? Kristen with Kpis, and then we've got the Salt River project team here as well. I will say this about this implementation that we've gone through. They have delivered every date almost, if it's 5 o'clock, I get it at 4. The team that you have, the drive that they have, it's just incredible. So I want to congratulate you on your leadership through this process. So it has been just stellar. But, if you could give a couple pieces of advice or some information to folks that are getting ready to go through that implementation, if there's any pointers or whatnot. And then I encourage you guys, please connect. Share your information so that you can lean on folks that have gone through it before. So, any pointers?
I think I heard it well from Darren yesterday when he was presenting, and he mentioned that the more input you get from the people that are using it, the more ownership they're going to have at the end of the day. So whatever you do, the more feedback you can get from the end user, the better it's going to go. And that would be my biggest recommendation, is just make sure your ears are open and you're listening and you're asking the questions while you're going through. All right, around this time is usually when someone on my team usually plays the crickets. So
Patrick, thank you very much. Big round of applause for Patrick.
thank you.